Hello and what's up, GSC Pokemon Challenges fam? How you guys doing? It's Teo. It's been a minute. I might have a quick life update at the end of this, but for now, let's get into episode 1 of the Morty Minimum Battles series. As we can see, we've got one Pokemon through already. That was our scout ahead with my personal Arcanine. You can go back and check how we did that one, but today we are coming through with just a few challengers. This is going to be a little bit shorter of an episode, but still I think an incredibly interesting one as we dig into how this Morty section is going to work, exactly what strategies I'm going to be using, and we'll kind of see how hard or not hard this section turns out to be. Whitney turned out to be a complete pushover, but I think the fact that we've got Rival 3 and Morty, two major boss battles in this section, is really going to affect how many Pokemon actually get through. So today we are going to come in with all of these starter evolutions that are currently still in the running. That includes the entire Charmander line. We've got Wartortle and Blastoise, then we've got Meganium, we've got Quilava and Typhlosion, and of course Croconaw and Feraligatr. We also have two member picks, Bulbasaur and Squirtle are coming in this one. It's going to be a little bit shorter episode, but we're just going to kind of see how it goes and use that to determine how many Pokemon to run in future episodes. But first things first, we've got to kick this off. Let's review what is going on in this Morty section. What can we do? What is actually available? And can Pokemon, for example, like our Bulbasaur with Ancient Power, find a way to get through this gym, in spite of the fact that we don't have a whole lot of good moves to use against ghosts here. So we are going to lead off, of course, with Caleb Marks's number 1, the Bulbasaur that is basically the best Bulbasaur that we could possibly get. We already know Sleep Powder, Ancient Power, Razor Leaf. We've got Tackle on the moveset. We just didn't have any reason to replace that with Return yet. And we basically come here, and the first thing that we're going to do is, of course, just meet Bill here as he apparently fixed a time machine. Not that we're ever going to use that. Not that we're ever going to use that. But then the first stop for every Pokemon, the standard route that I'm always going to do is to come and fight the 5 Kimono Girls. They have, of course, all the evolutions. We can take them on in whatever order we want, but the basic idea here is we're going to have to beat them anyway to progress in the game. They're right here in Ecruteak City, and of course, we can use them to get access to Surf from this old man right here, which for any water type Pokemon, or really any Pokemon that learns Surf, that's going to be such a strong move that we're probably going to learn it with everything that can. With that being said, I'm going to just lead off by fighting these Kimono Girls. We can fight them in whatever order we want, but I'll generally try to choose the ones that I'm strongest against first and fight the ones I'm weakest against last, if I can just remember which one is which. Now, the Kimono Girls are coming in at level 17, and that means that a medium slow level of Pokemon like Bulbasaur will already actually be at a higher level than these Pokemon. And of course, they love to use Sand Attack and other trolley strategies, but that shouldn't matter too much given that Gen 2 really nerfed accuracy strats. So I'm really not sure if these battles are actually going to be worth showing every single time, or if most of the time they're just going to be so easy that we can simply skip past them. If it turns out that they're just looking incredibly easy, we'll simply cut this out of the final videos because we don't want to waste a bunch of time. So of course, that brings us to the final Kimono Girl. Of course, with the Flareon, we're just going to use Ancient Power to easily knock it out in 2 hits. We had no issues here whatsoever with Bulbasaur against the Kimono Girls. I honestly think most Pokemon, if they're in the medium slow level up group, aren't going to struggle too much, but some of our slow level up Pokemon are going to be at significantly lower levels, and that could make those fights quite a bit harder. But now at this point, the only way to progress in the game is to go ahead and fight against rival number 3. He is the next required trainer that is here in Ecruteak, though as we showed with Arcanine, we can actually get more experience if this fight isn't going for us. I'm going to test it out first with every Pokemon by going straight to rival 3 after the Kimono Girls, basically trying to take the most efficient or logical route, and we're only going to deviate from this route if there is a reason, if we're completely losing this fight, or if we specifically need to get something from another location, for example going to the Lake of Rage. That's only going to be done if it's actually necessary in order to progress in the game. So here against Rival 3, the big challenge is that he leads off with this Haunter, which knows the move Curse. And Curse is basically a death sentence because it means that for any Pokemon that gets cursed here, you're probably not going to be able to get through the whole team. He's got a Magnemite now. Of course, he has his evolved starter. He still has Zubat. So there are plenty of tough Pokemon after the Haunter, even if you do manage to knock it out. So the best strategy is probably to go Ancient Power here and hope that it uses something like Lick. Instead, we get Curse on the second turn. And what that tells me is that the actual best strategy was probably going to be to use something like Sleep Powder on that first Haunter and really just hope that it doesn't go for something like Curse on us. So I'm going to try this one again because I think it would have been possible to win if I had just gone Sleep Powder right off the bat. The advantage we have here is that he's not guaranteed to use Curse every single turn. So for a Pokemon like this Bulbasaur, we can probably reset for the luck to get through this one. Here we do get licked, but of course we put this Pokemon to sleep. The best play against this Pokemon is still going to be Ancient Power, and this is going to be a 3-hit KO from the looks of things, but we get through with no Curse damage this time. Quilava comes out though. Quilava is going to do massive damage against us. There's not much we can do when we're already paralyzed, so that's the other issue. Even if we don't get Curse from that first Haunter, we could also get paralyzed by Lick, which is also a pretty big detriment here. So honestly, our best play is basically just to put everything to sleep that we can and just hope that then we can do enough damage with Ancient Power. This time we get the bad luck to get burned instead of getting paralyzed or anything like that, and that still is a major issue for us because that weakened Ancient Power. So we can at least see that that fight is taking a lot of luck. We would at least have to get Lick from the Haunter, not get paralyzed, get it to sleep, knock it out, get the Quilava to sleep, not get burned, knock that Pokemon out, and then we still have to deal with 2 more Pokemon. So it's probably not good enough to get through that. The issue is that we cannot come here and fight Morty in this version of the game in Pokemon Crystal until we have beaten Rival 3 and released the legendary beasts. In Pokemon Gold and Silver, you could come here and fight Morty right away, and that actually made it much easier to get through this section because the randos in Morty's gym are, by any definition, easier than Rival number 3. Now, fortunately, we don't have to go and fight the Rival right away. We can get more experience by routing through this section right here. Of course, we can grab ourselves a nice mint berry that could be helpful against Morty, but then when we get to this section, we have 2 trainers that are standing in front of us, but if we just fight this guy, we can actually backtrack. We don't even need to use Abra to teleport back, and all he has is a single Pikachu that we can simply use whatever moves we want against. It's only level 17, so generally speaking, I think any of our challengers at this point will beat that Pokemon. And once we get past that, we can simply come right down to Olivine City, and sure, we'll see the Rival, but he's just going to run away from us because he doesn't want to fight us right now, and we'll find the gym here completely empty, of course. We'll have to come back for Jasmine later. Now, Olivine opens up a couple things, of course. We can get access to the Strength HM right here, and we could use that for some Pokemon as a stronger normal type move, though I think Return is generally going to be the better play. But more importantly, we can come into the Lighthouse, where there are a few required battles. Not required in order to beat Morty per se, but required to beat the entire game. Whenever I say a battle is required, I'm talking about the totality of a full game solo run, not just the section that we're in right now. I'm going to avoid coming to the Lighthouse though as much as possible because it just takes extra time. Still, we can fight this gentleman right here with his Noctowl, where I'm pretty sure we just spam the move Ancient Power. We get a nice easy 2-hit KO. Then we can skip this guy right here. We can also skip the first guy on the 3rd floor, and then we have to fight the next gentleman with his 2 doggos. Now here we have to be careful that he could use Roar against us, which is not ideal, which is why I tried to put that Pokemon to sleep, and we're just going to have to kind of pay attention to situations like that where an opponent knows Roar and that could actually ruin our run. These are, of course, solo runs, so if we're forced to bring out another Pokemon, that would technically violate the whole solo challenge aspect of the run. Still, here we are faster, so as long as we actually put the Pokemon to sleep, we can then knock it out pretty darn easily. We even get our nice Omni boost, so after that I think we we can just one-shot the second Growlithe, and sure enough, we get through. We could learn Sweet Scent. I'm not going to learn it. It's a TM. We could always learn it later if we need it. But now coming up to the next floor, we have to fight this lass right here who has a Meryl, which is level 21, but we're going to make quick work of it with Razor Leaf. And then we have to make sure to drop down on the left side. That avoids this guy right here. We can also pick up an Ether, and we can make our way now up the tower to Jasmine and just see how things are going with Ampharos here. After that, we can drop down, we can pick up our first rare candy of the run, and we can just simply backtrack out of this section. Now, what did we get out of that? Well, we got a couple levels, and those couple levels could make a massive difference, especially in the case of a really tough fight like the Rival 3 fight. Now, in general, I'll simply use Abra in order to teleport back, but in this case, I don't actually have an Abra on the team. I had only gotten one Abra and traded it for the Machop. So in this case, we simply have to backtrack to this section. Now, there is one more thing that we can get that might help us in this section, of course. That is, we can actually route over towards the Lake of Rage. We cannot surf at this point until we beat Morty, but fortunately, we can simply go through the cave here. And while there are a couple trainers in here, of course, we don't have to fight them. We can make our way through and just pick up items if we need in order to sell them for money. But outside of picking up a few items in here, there's really nothing to do in this section. We can simply make our way through, and now it's on to the Lake of Rage. Now, because we haven't completed the Rocket Hideout yet, we of course cannot get access to Sludge Bomb at this point, but that's basically fine. We can simply skip past all of these trainers here. With proper routing, you don't have to fight any of these guys, and you can make your way up through this section and get access to at least quite a few new TMs and items. This of course includes a second rare candy in case we need it. We can get TM 43, which is of course Detect. But I think the thing that most people are going to comment on is the fact that we can come talk to this guy in this house who will give us access to TM10, which is of course Hidden Power. Because we're running max DVs, all of our Pokemon are going to have Hidden Power Dark, and it's going to be a max power 70 base power Hidden Power Dark. Now that could have a huge impact on the Morty section, of course, since it is a super effective move against both the Rivals Haunter and all of Morty's team. So a Pokemon that struggles here might be able to get through if they can get access to that move. The issue is that Hidden Power depends on your DVs. We're running specifically max DVs in this challenge, but that doesn't mean that every run is running on max DVs. And in fact, most of the time you wouldn't know your DVs if you're not using something like Game Hook or PK Hex or something like that. So I'm going to consider this to be in my unreasonable TMs category for the sake of this challenge, because the entire point is that you would have to have basically perfect DVs to have that max power Hidden Power that is also going to be the Dark type. And while I'm sure somebody's going to comment and say, yeah, but you don't actually have to get Hidden Power Dark, you could get Hidden Power Ghost, you could get Hidden Power Ground, you could get Hidden Power Psychic. Those would also be super effective against Morty. Fair enough, but you still wouldn't have any way to know what your Hidden Power type was until you at least got to this point in the game and then ran around for a while testing it against different Pokemon to see its effectiveness. And since we've already seen a lot of our challengers would have to struggle to get through Falkner, Bugsy, Rival 2, and Whitney on minimum battles, it's not like they were necessarily all cakewalks just because they're here. It wouldn't be very reasonable to say, oh, play through the first 3 gyms just to pick up Hidden Power and see if it's the right type. That's probably not a reasonable ask, at least in my personal opinion. I'd rather stick with strategies that generally are going to be consistent and repeatable, and if they're not consistent and repeatable within reason, then we're going to stick them in that unreasonable strategies category. But here we do have access to that Hidden Power as well as just having some more levels, so I think the first thing that we need to do is get back into the Rival 3 fight and just see how it goes. Now, as we can see, we're still slower than this Haunter here. We do manage to get licked twice in a row, 3 times in fact. We just were simply missing all of our sleep powders there. But now we can go into our Ancient Power in order to knock this Pokemon out. We also get an Omni Boost, and that Omni Boost means that we are in fact faster now than the Quilava, so we'll simply put it to sleep, go back into Ancient Power. We're going to knock it out nice and quick. Out comes the Magnemite. I'm just going to go Razor Leaf on it. We get an easy one-hit KO, and we'll stick with the Ancient Power on the Zubat to knock it out. So just like that, we managed to get through with our Bulbasaur thanks to Ancient Power and the Omni Boost. We can come free the legendary beasts. They're technically legendary cats apparently. But with that, we can now go to Morty's gym because he has returned to his correct position. Not sure why he was there investigating these legendary beasts, since none of them are ghost type, but still, with him back in the gym, we can now fight some randos, starting with this guy who's got some Ghastlies. We're basically just going to spam the Ancient Powers here, and thanks to the Omni Boost, I think we now sweep the rest of his team. So it's really kind of an open question if any of these trainers are ever going to be difficult here in Morty's gym. Given the fact that we already beat Rival 3, we can skip the second trainer in the gym though and go straight to this guy, where fortunately he can go Curse, but because of the fact that he doesn't have a big team, it's actually going to be much easier to get a lot of Pokemon through here. Even with some misses, we managed to win on the first attempt. The real question is just going to be if Pokemon have moves that can hit ghosts. That's where that Hidden Power Dark will come in for some of our challengers, because there are some normal types that simply don't have any moves at this point that can actually hit these Pokemon. In the case of Bulbasaur though, we're good enough with Ancient Power in order to be able to get through. The problem is that we can also get hit by Spite, which will use up our PP in Ancient Power, and then we're kind of hoping to get critical hits with our Razor Leaf. Fortunately, a move like Mean Look means absolutely nothing to us here, and we can manage to get through Martha, and with that, we are basically ready to go ahead and take on Morty, but I'm gonna just pop out and heal up first. Now, Morty, of course, likes to use Curse, but he also likes to use Hypnosis so that he can go Dream Eater with his Gengar here. So the Mint Berry is likely going to be the strategy for an awful lot of Pokemon, but we're just going to have to test it out and see what works. So here, Morty attempt number 1, I'm going to go Sleep Powder on the first Ghastly. We do manage to put it to sleep, and then I think we can just go ahead and use Razor Leaf to knock this one out. Out comes the first Haunter, and really no matter what we do, short of an Omni Boost, we're not going to outspeed here. He goes Curse. There was nothing that we could do about that situation, and we're just going to have to simply knock him out. Gengar comes out next. It misses Hypnosis. We're going for Ancient Power here because I think that's the only play that will work, and unfortunately we get knocked out on the first attempt. Now, there are a couple of items that could help us in this fight. One is, of course, to use the Quick Claw. The idea here for slower Pokemon is it could give us the luck to outspeed in the right spots, especially with a Sleep Powder user. That could be the way to get through those Haunters and Gengar that are actually faster than a lot of our Pokemon. So here we'll just repeat the same strategy of putting Ghastly to sleep and then going for Razor Leaf on it. Now on the Haunter, we're kind of hoping to outspeed with Sleep Powder. We don't get the luck this time. And then the other thing that I think we really want with our Bulbasaur is actually to get the Omni Boost from Ancient Power. So attempt 7, we actually did manage to put the Haunter to sleep first, then it goes Nightshade on us. So we knock it out without too much damage taken. Unfortunately, we get put to sleep by the Gengar, and there's nothing we can do to survive the Dream Eater. So I still think Omni Boost is the only way that we're going to be able to get through this one. Now, of course, we can also just get incredibly good luck to manage to get to the Gengar and put it to sleep with it missing Hypnosis, and then we just have to hope to deal enough damage, and in fact we do, to knock that Pokemon out. That brings us to the final Haunter, which only knows Spite, Mean Look, Mimic, and Nightshade. Of course, Nightshade is the toughest move here, but once we get to this final Pokemon without Curse, he cannot curse us here. So now we just need to actually land Sleep Powder and then whittle this one down with our Razor Leafs. So it's taken a ridiculous number of resets. I was resetting trying to get the Omni Boost for quite a while there, but in the end, we are able to beat Morty on minimum battles with our number 1 Bulbasaur with Ancient Power. Now, with that being said, we should at least come back and just see how this fight would have looked if we had used Hidden Power Dark, since it is super effective. So let's just give that a quick test here. So in this case, I'm simply going to replace Tackle with Hidden Power Dark. Since Tackle's useless, we could always learn Return later later on anyway. Let's just see what this fight would have looked like had we used this move instead. Now, of course, the first factor here is that Hidden Power Dark, because it is Dark type, is going to be super effective and simply one-shot the first Ghastly. For some reason, my overlay is incorrectly showing this as a fighting type move. It is a Dark type move, and we can see that is the case because it was super effective here. Now, when we get to the first Haunter, I don't think we even care if it uses Curse because we're just going to easily knock it out with Hidden Power Dark. After Gengar misses Hypnosis, Hidden Power Dark here is just a 2-hit KO on this Pokemon. So even though we're cursed here, we're just doing significantly better against Morty's team, and a critical hit Hidden Power Dark knocks out the final Haunter. So with Hidden Power Dark, we actually beat Morty on the very first attempt. And that basically tells us that a lot of Pokemon are gonna be able to get through the Morty fight at least, if they have access to this hidden power, but that's why we're gonna put them in the separate category, into that unreasonable TMs category. Because yes, if you get the luck to get that move, you're gonna be perfectly fine. But like I said, unless you're setting your DBs with something like Game Hook, Pokebite, or PK Hex, you don't actually know what your DBs are, and therefore you don't know what your hidden power typing is, and you'd have to get the luck to actually get the right typings here to be able to get through this. In the case with Bulbasaur, it does work though, and that would be the most consistent way to get through this section of the game. So with that, I will just give a massive thank you to Caleb Marks for letting me use your #1 Bulbasaur as the guinea pig in this section yet again, and ignore the score and all that over there. I think that's left over from the previous Pineco run. Anyway, Bulbasaur moves through, and let's see how we do with our first actual challengers. So with Bulbasaur done, that is the first of our 25 member picks that has managed to get through this section successfully. Now let's move on to our legit challengers, starting with the fire types. I'm very interested to see how this is going to go. We're going to lead off with Charizard, compare it up against that Typhlosion, and then make our way down through the evolutionary lines. And just as a quick aside note, I did a lot of detailed explanation during that Bulbasaur section. That is not going to be repeated at all throughout the rest of this series. You're just going to have to assume everything that I said there. If you leave a comment later saying, why did you do this? I'm probably going to say, go back and watch the Bulbasaur section. Anyway, with that done, let's move on to our legit challengers, starting with Charizard and Typhlosion. Let's see how our fire starters would actually do in this section on minimum battles. Now, Charizard, of course, has the distinction of being weak against 2 of the Kimono Girls. We're going to have to worry a little bit about the Vaporeon and the Jolteon, so I'm going to take them on in the order that I think is easiest, starting with the Flareon. And since we've made it this far with Rage on our moveset, I really think that's the way to go in these fights. Granted, it's kind of a bad idea if we come in without full health. I thought I healed. That's one thing where I might get faked out by talking to Bill there, thinking that I healed when I actually didn't, but I'll probably just cut that out in most of these cases. If you see a random reset or something, it might just be due to a minor error like that. And here we also have Fury Cutter, so against the Espeon and Umbreon, we're going to have a pretty easy time getting through just by letting Fury Cutter build up. And of course that means Charizard is making easy work of the first 3 Kimono Girls, but now we have to get to the 2 that are actually a little bit hard. Starting with the Vaporeon, I think our best play is to use Rage here. Water Gun is going to do massive damage, so we kind of have to hope that we can manage to deal enough damage to knock it out in 3 hits. We did not, so I'm going to have to retry this section. So now retrying on full health coming into this fight, we're taking 17 damage per hit from the Vaporeon, but fortunately with full health, we actually managed to knock it out in 4 hits, and we can move on in this run. We're going to have to basically heal between each of the Kimono Girls though, in order to have a chance. Now let's see how we do against this Jolteon, which is at least less bulky than the Vaporeon was. So I'm sticking with Rage. We are already faster. Thundershock's doing about the same amount of damage as Water Gun was, but it's just a 3-hitter to get through that one. So in this case, we're probably best off going against the Jolteon first. Now, of course, we don't actually get to learn Surf with our Charizard, but we'll simply progress in the game as we are. Now the question is, how do we manage to get through the rival? We have a few options here. We could go for Dig strategies. I'm pretty sure Dig still allows him to set up Curse though. Outside of that, we already know Mud Slap. We've got Ember. We could try to go for a YOLO strat like building up the Fury Cutter. Those could be our best strategies for getting through here. So first attempt against the rival, I'm going to go for the Mud Slap and just see HP, even with an accuracy drop, he's gonna always be able to use Curse. We can't stop him from hitting us with that because it hits himself, not the opponent. Anytime the move is used on yourself, it's 100% accurate and can never be avoided. Still, we do manage to knock Haunter out. We can move on to the Croconaw, where at this point I think we just go Rage and kind of pray that we can build up enough Rage to knock out the rest of the team. And of course, it's just not going to be anywhere near enough. So let's try a slightly different strategy here. Instead of going for Mud Slap, let's go for the Fury Cutter here right away, with the idea of trying to just build up massive amounts of damage. Of course, Haunter resists this move, so we're simply going to take too much damage to really get through with any HP left. But now let's see what Fury Cutter does. It does one-shot the Croconaw. Against Magnemite, it's also a one-hit KO. And now against the Zubat, it's not a one-hitter, and we simply get knocked out right there. So the entire issue here is that the Fury Cutter strat can work, but we really need to not get hit by that Curse at the beginning of this fight. Now what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to go and take on the Lighthouse and just see how that affects our ranges, because at a slightly higher level, maybe just maybe we can get that one to go. Now the biggest issue for us in this section is of course the Lass with her Meryl. It knows Rollout, which is 4 times super effective, but she's not smart enough to just use that move, so we do manage to get through nice and easy. But with that done, let's just come back and fight against our rival again and see what kind of range we get now that we've gained a level. I still think the Fury Cutter strat is our best play, and we're honestly probably hoping that we actually get the Haunter to not use Curse turn 1, to instead use something like Spite, Lick, Mean Look. We just need better luck than that, and of course we can't miss any Fury Cutters here. Now one other strategy of course is to try to give our Pokemon a Gold Berry. Now Gold Berries are actually available in this section. You don't just have the one from the in-game trade, but you can also get them from the national park by doing the bug catching contest and getting 3rd place. So they're technically infinite here, but even without gold berries, we could try berries instead just to recover a little bit of HP. That could actually help us get through this section and survive more turns of Curse. So with the gold berry on now, we get cursed, but we're just hoping not to miss any Fury Cutters. We really don't like getting paralyzed here. That was kind of the worst case scenario for us. Still, we managed to get through that first Pokemon. We're just gonna have to take damage from everything now though, and that's probably all she wrote for this one. Here we do get one Spite from the Haunter, which basically gave us a free turn. So now we can build up our Fury Cutter. We still managed to one-shot Croconaw. We're still going to manage to one-shot Magnemite, and we can see that we're on 62 HP now going into the final Zubat. So even though we missed there, we might still have a chance here. I'm going Ember. It goes Confuse Ray on me. We managed to move, and so just like that, we do manage to beat the rival thanks to the Gold Berry. And honestly, a little bit of bad luck to miss the Fury Cutter there at the very end, so it might have been possible even with just a normal berry to be able to get through that fight. But with that done, let's take Charizard now into Morty's gym, just beat up on some trainers. It might be more of the same strategy. We might just be building up Fury Cutter, because even if they curse us, as long as we can build it up enough, we might be able to just sweep through some teams here. Still, I think the easier strategy is just to lead off with the Mud Slap and see if it gets the 1-hit KO. It does not, so these are going to be 2-hit KOs on these Ghastlies. That basically tells us all that we need to know. We're going to be taking curse damage this entire time. With level ups, however, we can manage to reach the point of being able to knock those Pokemon out. We could learn Scary Face here. I'm not going to learn that move. I don't think we need it with Charizard. We're already plenty fast, so I don't think we really need to slow other Pokemon down. And we'll just simply pop out to heal up our PP in Mud Slap and then go back into the gym. So here, once again, we're not getting great luck with the Mud Slap here. It is a really weak move. We could upgrade to Dig if we need to, but for now I'm sticking with Mud Slap since it does have some accuracy benefits. So technically Ember should be stronger here, and in fact Ember gets a one-hitter there and gets a one-hitter there, so Ember is technically our strongest move and probably the best move for us to be using in this situation. We also have Fire Punch if we need an upgrade on Ember, since we are running with a Charizard. So let's just see how this actually works. I'm going to try Morty one time with my moveset as it is, and I'll consider adding on that Fire Punch as my first go-to if things aren't really working out, just because Dig still allows him to set up Curse while we're underground. So first attempt against Morty here, I'm just going to go for Ember and see what kind of damage we do. We get a one-shot on the first Pokemon. Ember on the Haunter, we are also faster than this Pokemon, so we get an easy 2-hit KO. Gengar comes out, we're going to go Ember. We're faster than this Pokemon thanks to being on max DVs, but we get put to sleep by the Hypnosis, so I think the Mint Berry is the way to go here to avoid Hypnosis, hopefully, and be able to get through that fight. So let's try round 2 here against Morty. We're going to go Ember on the first Pokemon yet again. We'll stick with the Ember on the Haunter. We burn it. It misses Hypnosis. We easily knock it out the next turn. Out comes the Gengar. I'm going to stick with the same strategy. It does hit Hypnosis, but we heal with the Mint Berry. It then Hypnosises us again though and goes into the Dream Eater, and that's basically the whole issue here. If we get put to sleep by Gengar, it's going to be able to heal up a bunch of damage, so even if we did wake up, we were going to still have more turns to have to knock that Pokemon out. So I really think we're hoping for misses from Hypnosis here in order to get through. Here we get one Hypnosis miss, we get a burn and a second Hypnosis miss, which is very nice because I didn't save with the Mint Berry on, but we managed to knock that Pokemon out. We get to the final Haunter, and here Ember is going to be more than enough to get us through that. So we didn't even need to add on a move like Fire Punch here in order to get through. We simply need to use a Gold Berry in order to get through Rival 3, and then Morty is really Mint Berry and just hope not to get put to sleep. So with that, I will simply step outside and save the game, and let's move on now to Typhlosion. Now, unlike our Charizard, Typhlosion already knows the move Fire Punch, so it's already got an advantage in that sense that it's going to have a stronger move to use in this section. So once again, we'll come in and fight the Kimono Girls and then try to make our way to Rival 3. And of course, because Typhlosion is a pure fire type, it's only weak against this final Kimono Girl with the Vaporeon, and we're already at level 23, so I think we're basically fine here. I'm going to go for the quick attack in order to try to knock this one out. It looks to be a 4-hit KO. We're going to easily get through this fight. We did use a berry here, but it really was never in question. But now let's just see if Fire Punch is a strong enough move to allow us to get through the Rival without even needing to route over to the Lighthouse. It's worth noting that we can learn Fury Cutter, but we can also learn Thunder Punch in order to knock out the opponent's Croconaw, and that might actually be the best strategy for progressing here. So first up against the Haunter, I'm going to go for Fire Punch. It doesn't quite get a one-hit KO, but it knocks itself out right after that. Now against the Croconaw, the question is how much damage do we do? Quick Attack doesn't do nearly enough, and then Fire Punch yet again isn't going to do nearly enough, so I think the Thunder Punch is the way to go here, simply because if we can manage to knock out Croconaw quickly, Fire Punch will be good against Magnemite, and then we can go back to Thunder Punch in order to knock out the final Zubat. So here I'm simply going to teach Thunder Punch. I'm going to teach this over Leer. I think this is the best strategy. I don't think we're going to go for a lot of Leer strats at any point in the run. Really, our elemental punches are probably better moves for most of this challenge. So let's try the Rival once again with this moveset now. We'll go Fire Punch again on Haunter. A critical hit, of course, would get us through without Curse, but now Thunder Punch on Croconaw nearly gets the one shot. It will definitely get a 2-hit KO there. Now against the Zubat, we can stick with Thunder Punch and get the one-hitter, and out comes the Magnemite, where we can go Fire Punch and get an easy one-hit KO. So just like that, we easily get through. We didn't have to go for any sort of crazy or unreasonable TM in order to do it. We can get to the legendary dogs, and now let's just make our way straight to Morty's gym. If we can avoid going to the Lighthouse at this point, we simply will. And of course, here with Fire Punch, we're basically going to one-shot all of the Ghastlies on the first trainer. I think we're going to get much better ranges overall in this section, so we should be able to make our way straight to Morty without too much issue. And sure enough, we're one-shotting every single Pokemon on the way to Morty himself, so now it's just a question of whether or not we can manage to beat the gym leader. So first up, we've of course got Morty's Ghastly. We go for Fire Punch, which gets a one-hit KO. Haunter's out next. We go for Fire Punch, another one-hit KO. Here we're already faster than the Gengar, so Fire Punch. It's going to be a two-hitter, but he misses the Hypnosis, so that Pokemon goes down nice and easy, and Fire Punch is a one-hitter on the final Haunter. So this was never in question. We just had to add Thunder Punch in order to get through Rival number 3, and then Morty was a complete pushover. So I think we can see a couple things just immediately from these first 3 Pokemon. Number 1 is that Rival 3 is going to be much tougher than Morty himself in most cases. There will certainly be some cases where Morty will, I think, give us some difficulty though, and we're at least going to have to go for that Hidden Power Dark to make it work. That being said, it's certainly not impossible to get through with these fully evolved Pokemon, but now let's step down to the less evolved forms. And that of course starts us off with Charmeleon, which again already learned the move Fire Punch in the previous section, so I think this Pokemon might actually outperform compared to its fully evolved form in Charizard, which was stuck with just Ember. And granted, we could go for Fury Cutter strats here if we really want to, but I'm going to stick with the moveset as it is for now. And of course that means that the only Kimono girl that's really going to give us any trouble here is the final one with the Vaporeon. Kuni is actually the word for country in Japanese, though it might be something else here. Usually you'd think it would be like Kumi if it was a girl's name, but anyway, we're gonna just sit here and spam Rage and hope that she builds our Rage enough that we can knock her out before she can knock us out with the Water Gun. We just barely survive with 2 HP, but we get through on the first attempt. And with that, let's simply make our way to Rival 3 and just see how we do in this fight. Now, the really big disadvantage that we have here with the Charmander line is that we do not get access to the move Thunder Punch, so we don't have a great move to use against the Croconaw outside of going for the Fury Cutter strat. Still, I'm gonna just test this out because I think Fire Punch with a critical hit can just one-shot there. Sure enough, it does. So we get through Haunter without any curse. On to Croconaw now. I think we just start building Rage and hoping that we can build up enough Rage to knock it out. We probably need a berry of some sort on, but here he's building up our Rage pretty nicely. We nearly managed to knock him out. So let's go back into this with a berry on just to see, because if we can manage to get through that first Haunter yet again without getting cursed, we may just have a shot here. Of course, it does require a critical hit to get that to go, so then with curse on, there's simply no way we're going to survive long enough against the Croconaw to build up our Rage. So that makes me think the Fury Cutter strat is at least the way to go here. I'm going to replace Growl with Fury Cutter. Let's just see what that does for us. So here we'll just simply start setting up Fury Cutter on the Haunter and just hope not to get paralyzed here as we build this move up. So we do manage to knock that Pokemon out. We can completely destroy Croconaw, of course. Zubat's out next. I'm going to Fire Punch here. It is not a one-hit KO. We just barely miss the opportunity to knock that Pokemon out. Yet again, a critical hit would have gotten it done, but I think simply going and gaining a level at the Lighthouse is the best strategy to make that fight more consistent. It's important to note that for these medium slow level up Pokemon, we're getting to level 25, which is a damage rounding threshold. So it's not just gaining the level, we're actually going to do a little bit more damage with all of our moves, just because we get a level that ends in 0, 3, 5, or 8. That's just the way that rounding works when doing damage calculations in these Pokemon games. So back to the Rival after gaining a level here, we're going to go back into the Fury Cutter strat. Of course, we're still going to get cursed, but now we're just hoping that we manage to deal enough damage here that we can actually manage to get through this Pokemon. We do knock that one out. Croconaw comes out and is a one-hit KO. He sends out Zubat next. Fire Punch here is a one-hitter now, and of course Magnemite can't stand up to Fire Punch, so we actually managed to get through just fine there. No Goldberry required. We simply needed to get enough power that Fire Punch could one-shot that Zubat, and the extra level is all that it takes. So we're still on minimum battles, though we did have to do routing in a slightly inefficient order by going to Olivine first, but Charmeleon is ready to move on to Morty's gym. I expect Fire Punch to be pretty strong here, not quite as strong as Typhlosion, but still we should make pretty quick work of these randos, so let's get straight to Morty. So here I'm actually going to give Charcoal to my Charmeleon, just to see if the power-up in Fire Punch is enough to get us through this section. We've already got 69 speed, very nice, which I think is enough to already outspeed the Gengar, so I think having the Charcoal for extra damage is possibly the best play. So here against Morty, we're going to lead off with a Fire Punch on the first Ghastly, which is a one-hit KO. Haunter comes out next, Fire Punch gets the one-hitter there as well. Gengar comes out and we are faster. We did about half, it puts us to sleep with Hypnosis, but still, if we can manage to just dodge one Hypnosis, which is a 40% chance, we should be able to get through this fight. This time instead we get a critical hit to one-shot the Gengar and get to level 29. The final Haunter comes out, but it doesn't stand any chance, so only a couple attempts to get through Morty there. And that kind of shows that, at least in some of these cases, even against rival number 3, we might have been able to go for Charcoal instead in order to try to get through that Zubat. The ranges there were really close though, so I think the berry did make sense in the end, but still, it's possible to get through with Charmeleon on minimum battles through Morty as long as you go to Olivine first. So that of course brings us to Quilava, which has a lot of interesting possibilities here because we can learn moves like Rollout if we really want to. We don't get the elemental punches with this Pokemon though, so we're going to be stuck with only Ember as our best fire type move, which is where something like Rollout really could come in handy here. It's also of course possible to go for Fury Cutter strats, so that could be another possibility for getting us through. So once again, we're going to just have to see how Kuni goes. Of course, we're going to go quick attack with this Pokemon and we're not doing nearly enough damage to get through. So we're going to need to probably go for some sort of Mud Slap strat to get this one to go. Still, it does not quite work. So I think this is a good spot to just go ahead and add on Rollout. Of course, we're just banking on this move to build up enough damage that it allows us to knock out our opponents. So let's just see how it actually works. Here we go, Rollout, and we're just hoping for it to double the damage, and sure enough, it does get us through Kuni there, and we have completed the Kimono Girls. Now the question is, will it build up enough to get us through that Croconaw, even if we get cursed by the first Haunter? We could technically use something like the Hard Stone in order to get through this, but let's just see if it builds up enough to actually make a difference or not. So here against rival number 3, I'm just going to go straight for Rollout. We get cursed and then we immediately miss the first Rollout, but then we hit 2 more to knock that Pokemon out. We only do about half to Croconaw though. I think if we had hit all the Rollouts though, we might have been able to deal enough damage to just one-shot Croconaw there. Let's try this again. So back again, he goes Lick and then Curse, but that means we get here at least with better health, so Rollout does knock out Croconaw this time. Zubat is an easy one-hit KO, and now when we get to the Magnemite, we're ready to just use Ember to get the one-shot, so we actually get through that fight just fine with the Rollout strats. And that at least tells us a strategy that we can use to get through the next section here against Morty, because Rollout, provided we don't get confused or paralyzed, could be a decent enough strategy to get through these Ghost-type Pokemon since they don't have great physical defense. Let's just test this out though. Now coming into Morty, we're once again fast enough with 67 speed that we can guarantee that we outspeed all of Morty's team. So it really is just going to come down to whether or not Rollout can build up enough damage to one-shot that Gengar. If it can, then we're basically good to go. So here I'm going to lead off with Rollout on the Ghastly. It's going to get an easy 2-hitter right there. Out next is the Haunter, which is a 1-hitter. Next, Gengar, 1-hitter. And finally, we have the final Haunter, which is a 1-hitter. So we took no damage in that entire fight from Morty's team. Turns out that Rollout, as long as you're faster, is a pretty OP strat here, even against the Ghost Gym. And since we know that a lot of Pokemon learned Rollout in order to get through Whitney, basically just turning her strategy against her, I think this is going to be a pretty reasonable way for a lot of Pokemon to get through Morty. The question is just either outspeeding against that Gengar or being able to survive a turn, for example, with a Mint Berry, because it just loves to use Hypnosis. Anyway, that gets Quilava through. Let's check on our last fire type, which is Charmander, and see if it can match what these evolved forms have. So Charmander once again has already learned the move Fire Punch, so it's got a pretty decent strategy for getting through here. The question is just its stats. Obviously it's much weaker than Charmeleon, and it might just not be able to outspeed enough opponents in order to actually get through this section. And here we can really see the stats coming in. We get a critical hit water gun, which took us down to super low health, so it was just a 2-hitter to knock us out from this Vaporeon. So Kuni could be a major problem for us here. So I'm actually going to bypass Kuni for a minute here and just come and try to fight the rival instead. There's no reason why we have to beat the Kimono Girls before we come into this battle. Let's just see how it actually goes. So here against the rival, I'm going to go Fire Punch first on the Haunter. It is a 2-hit KO, so it simply knocks itself out the next turn. Swift here is not going to do nearly enough damage to the Croconaw though, and it's just going to build up Rage, and between Rage and Curse we're going to get knocked out. But then in that case, let's just test the Goldberry here. Let's just see how it would do on this Charmander, and let's also give access to the move Fury Cutter. So I'm simply going to forget Swift to learn Fury Cutter, since we can learn plenty of other normal type moves that will be stronger than Swift, and let's just see if we can manage to get the same sort of strategy that we use with Charmeleon and Charizard to actually work here. So of course against the Haunter, I'm going to lead off with Fury Cutter instead. We get Lick turn 1 and then Curse turn 2, but that's perfectly fine. We just need to build up the damage here. Now we get Paralyzed, which was pretty much the worst case scenario, and that means that we're probably getting knocked out on this one. Still, with all this buildup, we might still be able to one-shot against the Croconaw, so it's just a matter of not getting that paralysis. So this time we get through with no paralysis, we one-shot the Croconaw. Zubat comes out next. I'm going to go Fire Punch. It's going to be a 2-hit KO on this Pokemon, but we do easily knock it out. And then out comes the Magnemite, which we can simply one-shot with Fire Punch. So we actually managed to get through the rival easier than we could get through the Kimono Girls, thanks to that Fury Cutter plus Fire Punch combo. So I'm going to take out the randos inside of the gym and then go back and try to fight that last Kimono Girl just to see if I can finally manage to beat her. So after making quick work of all those trainers, we're back to Kuni here. We're now at level 26, so quite a bit stronger than we were before, and let's just see if we can manage to build up enough damage as we get into this fight. Now Water Gun is still just doing massive damage to us, so we still get 3-shot there. There wasn't too much that we could do about it. So in that case, I think our best strategy is actually to come and fight Morty again. I'm going to simply give Charcoal just to see if we do extra damage. If we can maybe manage to miss 1 or 2 Hypnosises, we might just sweep the team with the Fire Punch. Let's test it out. So first up against Ghastly, we go Fire Punch. That's an easy 1-hit KO. Out next is the Haunter, which is going to be a 2-hitter, and it used Curse against us. We're actually slower than the Gengar here as well, so this is going to be a tougher fight. So we may actually need to root to Olivine in order to gain extra levels, since we're not getting through Morty and we're not getting through that last Kimono Girl. This is also a spot where the Mint Berry just makes a lot of sense when we get to that Gengar. Now of course nothing in the Lighthouse is any challenge whatsoever outside of getting roared over and over again by the last gentleman, but now we're at level 27. Let's just come back and see if we can manage to win this fight against Kuni now. In this case, we are now able to survive 3 hits from Water Gun, so we managed to knock her out and get to level 28, which is a damage rounding threshold. So now let's just see if this is enough to get us through Morty. So back to Morty, of course, we're going to go Fire Punch on the first Ghastly and get the KO. Haunter's out next. We still do not get a 1-hit KO on that Pokemon, and we're still slower than this Gengar. It misses the first Hypnosis though. Still with Curse and Sleep on the second Hypnosis, we're simply going to lose this fight. So what's pretty clear is that we're going to have to go with the Mint Berry rather than going with the Charcoal here if we're going to have any real chance chance of getting through this fight. Unfortunately, taking off the charcoal means that this Gengar is definitely going to be a 3-hit KO for us, so it's going to be a little bit harder to get through without the charcoal on. This time we do get the first turn miss from Hypnosis from Gengar though, and we burn it. It misses the next Hypnosis as well, so we knock it out in just 2 turns. We don't have Curse on, so as we come to the final Haunter, it can only go Nightshade, and we actually win. So Charmander can get through there. It's certainly less consistent than any of the other fire types that we did so far, owing to the fact that of course it has the weakest stats, and it really showed that we struggled against one of the Kimono girls and had to route around to get all the possible XP just to have a chance to get through there. Still, that does it for all of our fire types. Let's check in on the progress so far. So through our first 5 challengers, of course we're 5 for 5, adding them on with our Arcanine means that all of these fire types have managed to get through this section. Who knows, maybe it's just fire types that are going to be really kind of decent here. We'll just have to see, but we are starting to see some strategies that will work in this section. Moves like Rollout and Fury Cutter remain pretty strong as long as you can avoid status, and sometimes with berries in order to just manipulate HP ranges. Even with Curse being an issue, we can find ways through with that. Of course, moves like Elemental Punches are also pretty darn strong here still, and really, we're at a high enough level with medium slow level of Pokemon at least, that it seems like we're not struggling that much in the Morty fight. But now let's get into a Pokemon that might struggle a little bit. Let's test out that Meganium. Meganium doesn't get a whole lot in terms of TM compatibility in this section, so it's basically going to be stuck with the moveset that it has, and that might just mean that this Pokemon is our first Pokemon to get eliminated in this section, or at least get forced into that unreasonable TM section due to using Hidden Power. So now with Meganium, we have a couple options that we can go for. Of course, we can get Fury Cutter, and we could also get Hidden Power Dark if we absolutely need a move, but it still isn't great. I don't expect Fury Cutter to be enough to just get through this entire section, and Hidden Power Dark is going to put us in that unreasonable TMs category, but that might be the best that we've got, since I mean, Fury Cutter is 4 times resisted by the ghosts, and Razor Leaf is going to be resisted by all of Morty's team as well. So yeah, the options are just kind of slim for this Pokemon in this part of the game. That being said, we can come in and fight the Kimono girls first, which should be pretty easy, but let's see how it actually goes. So here at level 23, we do get to learn Synthesis, which will allow us to heal in battle, and that could actually be really useful. I'm going to keep Reflect for now because Reflect might be useful somewhere. We could always replace that move with something like Headbutt if we decide to later, but for now, Tackle just really doesn't have that much utility, so I'm just going to go ahead and learn Synthesis instead. And seeing as we've already got Mud Slap on the moveset here, I think this is a perfectly fine spot to just come fight the final Kimono girl with the Flareon. Sure, we get burned, but I don't think we're actually in any danger here because we can just heal up with Synthesis. Sure enough, we get through nice and easy. But honestly, Synthesis could be the game changer, because even if we get hit by Curse, we could heal up damage in battle and just use that as a way to basically stall our opponents out. Still, we gotta test it out. Let's get in here to the Rival 3 fight and see if we can find a way to win. So Rival 3 attempt number 1, of course he's gonna lead off with the Haunter. I'm going to Mud Slap this Pokemon. He goes Curse as we would expect, but we knock him out the next turn. Out next is the Zubat, and this is a good place, I think, to think about Synthesis, because I think he's going to want to use Leech Life. I don't know, Bite probably does more damage, but still we managed to at least get a Reflect up in case we need it later on. And now I guess we just have to go Razor Leaf and hope to deal enough damage. So we're really banking on Synthesis to heal us enough to at least deal some damage here. I guess the Reflect didn't really do anything for us, and we're simply going to go down. So I don't think that fight's at least going to be reasonably consistent at this point, so I'm going to make my way to the Lighthouse in Olivine just to gain an extra level and see how that affects the ranges. But honestly, it might just be a spot to learn Headbutt so that we have a neutral move against that Zubat, and with that we may be able to just get through that Pokemon pretty easily and move on through the rest of the team. And in fact, even the first Lighthouse old man gave me trouble. He knocked me out once because he has a Knockdowl and I didn't have a strong enough move, so I'm just going to go ahead and add on that Headbutt here and see how it goes. So with Headbutt on the moveset, of course, we're going to do significantly more damage and have the chance to flinch opponents, and that could be all that it takes, at least to get through that Zubat on Rival 3's team as well. So with the available trainers in the Lighthouse cleared, let's come back to Rival 3 now with Headbutt on the moveset and just see if we can find a way through now. So of course against the Haunter, there's still nothing to do but simply go for the Mud Slap and we can knock it out in 2 turns. He's going to send out Zubat because everything else on his team is weak against Mud Slap and he's already seen us use it. But here we will simply Headbutt and nearly get the 1-hitter. We take it out in 2 hits instead. Now we can go back to Mud Slap strats on Quilava. Ember's obviously going to do a lot of damage, but we can heal up with Synthesis here, though it does kind of get us into a healing loop. We're like healing just enough damage for the burn plus the curse to take us back down. And since we're burned, we're not going to do that much damage with our attacking moves, so we're simply going to lose this attempt. Next attempt, we managed to get to Quilava still on full health. I'm going to go for Headbutt instead, because then we can get a flinch just like that. And this is going to be a 3-hit KO, but then we can just Mud Slap him down from there. We get to level 26 as Magnemite comes out, and I'm just going to Mud Slap it and win. So yeah, Headbutt is really the key there. Just having a stronger, neutrally effective move is way better than, you know, relying on Razor Leaf and Mud Slap. Still, that Headbutt is not going to help us in Morty's gym, so we're going to have to see if Mud Slap is enough really, or otherwise Razor Leaf with critical hits might be enough to get us through, but this is going to be a little bit difficult, I think. Now, just like our previous challengers, none of the randos in the gym really presented any challenge to us because, again, if we can get through Rival 3, they're basically just not going to be that hard. But now it's time for Morty. Of course, we know he's going to use sleep strats, so I think I'm going to go in first with the Mint Berry and just see if that is enough to get us through here. But I expect we're going to have to rely on Synthesis somewhere in order to heal up. So first attempt here, we're just going to go Mud Slap on the Ghastly. It's going to be a 2-hit KO as he uses Curse. Out comes the first Haunter. We're going to go Mud Slap here as well. We're really hoping that Mud Slap helps us by, for example, reducing the accuracy of Hypnosis. We are faster than Gengar here. We get to dodge the first Hypnosis and the second Hypnosis. I'm just healing up a little bit with Synthesis, and he still continues to miss. So I'm going to try to knock the Gengar out. We do. We get to level 29. Now I'm going to heal up here because I know he's going to go Nightshade or Spite here. We got Spite. Oh no. So now we have to hope that we can manage to knock him out on the next turn. He survives with 1 HP remaining as we go down to the Curse. So his use of Spite there, using up the rest of our Synthesis, was actually really smart, and that pretty much did us in. So let's try this one again. Maybe we can get a better range here. Still, we're gonna get cursed by the first Ghastly no matter what we do, it seems like. Of course, a critical hit from Mud Slap would knock that Pokemon out, so that would actually be the ideal. Here he misses a Hypnosis, which is exactly what we wanted to see, and now we're just going to stick with the Mud Slaps on the Gengar, hoping that it misses Hypnosis after that so that we can heal up. And sure enough, it is missing quite a bit. So I'm gonna do my last heal here before we knock this Gengar out. Very nice. And now we are on the final Haunter. We're hoping that with Mud Slap we can get a miss or something. It's down to 1 HP. It goes Spite on Mud Slap, but we can go Razor Leaf. And just like that, we do manage to beat Morty with Meganium. It is very close, but we did not have to go Hidden Power strats. Remember, we would be putting it in a separate category if it went Hidden Power because it's not actually that reasonable to be resetting for a perfect Hidden Power here. But yeah, it does in fact manage to get us through. So Meganium joins the winners column, but barely. That makes me very nervous for any other grass types because most of them aren't going to be able to use Mud Slap. So it's not like we have many grass types remaining, but still they could struggle a lot if they do manage to get here. But that does make us 6 of 6 so far in this episode. Basically everything except the member pick Bulbasaur has gotten through with legit strategies so far. Now we've got to check in on our water types. We have, of course, the Feraligatr and Blastoise Blastoise. Let's start with Blastoise and flip around between these two evolutionary lines, because at the end, we're going to end off with our member pick that is a Squirtle. Let's just see how it goes. And now this is the point where I played through Blastoise, Feraligatr, and part of Wartortle, only to find out that I wasn't recording, so we're going to have to go back and do this whole thing again. Now the first big factor here is that we are actually faster than Jolteon at this point, given that we're 6 levels higher, and that means that we can use Mud Slap to lower its accuracy and pretty easily get through that fight. And with that, we get access to Surf, but I'm not going to learn this right away. I'm not sure if I need it. I think this section's a lot more about Bite. Surf will be an upgrade on Bite because it will technically do more damage, but Bite gives us the chance to flinch our opponents, and as long as we're faster, that's all we probably need. So let's come straight into the Rival 3 fight and see how we do against his Haunter. So we're going to lead off with Bite here, and we can see it's not a one-hit KO, and then he uses Curse. Now, we ideally would get a flinch there, and then he wouldn't be able to use Curse, or a critical hit would one-shot this Pokemon. So after that, he sends out the Magnemite. Of course, I'm just going to Mud Slap and get an easy 2-hit KO here on this Pokemon. Then comes the Bayleaf, and here's where we have to get really good Bite luck in order to hopefully get it to flinch multiple times. And of course, Razor Leaf is going to knock us out with the Curse damage piling up. Still, let's see how it goes if we can get through without a Curse. Here we get a critical hit, so we just one-shot the first Haunter. Now we can go into our Mud Slaps on the Magnemite, so we're going to the Bayleaf on full health. Now we can bite it. We get poisoned there, which isn't ideal, but then he flinches. He flinches again, so we simply knock that Pokemon out. We could learn Rapid Spin here, but I'm not going to. We're never going to really worry about spikes in a solo run. So we can get to the final Zubat, where I'm just going to go for Water Gun, and it's going to be a 2-hit KO. We get confused, which is not ideal, but we still manage to win. So just like that, we beat the Rival. It's all just a matter of getting the flinch or getting the critical hit on that first Haunter so we don't get cursed. So now I expect Bite to do perfectly fine against all of the randos inside of Morty's gym. The real question is just that Gengar on Morty's team. And it's worth noting that Hidden Power Dark, even with max power, is only 10 power more than Bite as a Dark type move, so realistically, it's not that much of a power jump to have the hidden power, whereas Bite you're always going to get via level up, so this is a truly consistent strategy here against this gym. And thanks to Bite, we actually one-hit KO all of the rando trainers Pokemon here, so it's really just a matter of Morty himself. So against Morty on the first attempt, I'm just going to bite the first Ghastly, which is a one-hit KO. Haunter comes out next, we one-shot that Haunter as well, and we can see that a max DV's Blastoise with the badge boost from Whitney is 2 points of speed faster than Gengar, despite of the fact that we're only 2 levels higher. So with that, we can hope for a flinch or a Hypnosis Miss there. It's going to be a 2-hit KO, and we level up to level 28 as the final Haunter comes out and gets one shot. So that fight was really never in question. If you throw a Mint Berry on this Pokemon, you are essentially guaranteed to win when you're running max DVs. With lower DVs, we're probably talking about a 3-hit KO range against that Gengar. You're going to have to get a little more luck, and you're also not going to outspeed the Gengar. So the Mint Berry will absolutely be required there, but in this one, it works out just fine. And Blastoise can be our first water type moving on. Surf, not really necessary at this point. It will definitely help us against Jasmine's gym though, so we will be learning Surf at some point. It's just a matter of when. But with that, I have to play through the entire game up to this point again with Feraligatr so that we can test it out, but let's see how that Pokemon goes. So that of course brings us to Feraligatr, which is running a very similar set to Blastoise and has very similar stats. The main difference here is that we've got Fury Cutter on our moveset, so we can actually use that as a strategy to try to get through the Bayleaf. But let's see how it actually works out. So we're still going to be able to outspeed all of these opponents, which means if we can just get a flinch on this Jolteon, we're probably fine. We also had a Baryon, so we simply healed with that, and we win very, very easily. So the Kimono Girl Mickey never stood a chance against our Feraligatr. Now we can get access to Surf. We have that in the bag if we need it, but let's make our way now to Rival number 3. So here against the Rival, of course, we're going to lead off with Bite, the same as we did with our Blastoise, and we're hoping for the same thing. A critical hit or a flinch allows us to get through with very little damage. Magnemite comes out next, and here's, I think the best strategy is actually to set up Fury Cutter. It's not going to be effective by any means, but if we can manage to build it up enough to knock out the Magnemite, we should be in a position to just one-shot the Bayleaf. So Bayleaf comes out, we hit the Fury Cutter, and sure enough, that is a one-hit KO. We've got plenty of HP left, so we can really do anything here against the Zubat. I'm just going to bite to try to flinch it. We get confused, and we hit ourselves in confusion, of course, but we knock him out on the next turn. So the rival, as long as you manage to get through that first Haunter without the curse, is basically no issue. And after releasing the legendary beasts and listening to Eugene get super excited about them, we're simply going to run outside and make quick work of all the randos in the gym so we can get straight to Morty himself. Now the big difference here is we're not necessarily one-shotting all of the Haunters. Bite is just not quite as strong, I don't think. I think our special attack is a little bit lower here. Still, it's doing enough damage that we're able to get through all the randos without any HP lost, but we're gonna have to see if we get the right ranges against Morty or not. So first off, against the Ghastly, a single bite will still knock that Pokemon out. Let's see how we do against the level 21 Haunter though. It is enough to one-hit KO there as well. We're faster than Gengar, and the range looks to be a 2-hit KO. He misses Hypnosis, so we can simply knock him out the next turn as we get to level 28. I'm not going to learn Scary Face. I don't think I need that move here, so I'm just going to stick with all my attacking moves as they are. We can bite the final Haunter. It was a guaranteed victory at that point. Like, the worst he can really do to us, I guess, is like confuse us or maybe just spite to use up a bunch of PP. I don't know what else he could do. Nightshade's not going to knock us out. So we get through nice and easy with Feraligatr, and that leads us back to where I was before I accidentally realized I wasn't recording. We're back to Wartortle. So I'm going to play Wartortle again from the beginning of the game just to get back here, and we will see how it stacks up against its evolved form. So now that we're back to this section with our Wartortle, it's time to make our way and see how this Pokemon performs, in spite of the fact that it has slightly lower stats. The biggest thing that I'm worried about is that we're not going to be able to outspeed that Gengar, because we were only 2 points of speed faster than that Pokemon previously with fully evolved Pokemon. So I don't think there's any way that we actually outspeed there short of the Quick Claw. That's going to make the Mint Berry really important here, I think. And because we have lower special, even here against, for example, the Kimono Girls, the Flareon is a 3-hit KO rather than a 2-hit KO. So even this fight becomes a lot more tedious. So as we make it to the last Kimono Girl, Mickey, here with the Jolteon, we actually have to be careful in this fight too, because if she crits us, we're guaranteed to lose. I'm going to go for the Mud Slap strats to try to get misses from Thundershock. Here we get paralyzed, which is not ideal, but then we get a critical hit. Without the crit, we were going to lose there because we're already slower than the Jolteon and we're weak to its moves, but that was pretty lucky to be able to get the range that we needed on that first attempt. Here we can get access to Surf though, and that will give us an upgraded move if we need it. I'm going to stick with my moveset as is for now though, because Surf technically is stronger, but it's not that much stronger than using Bite in this section against all of the ghosts. So the only real reason we would want to learn it is maybe to deal better damage against the Magnemite here against rival number 3, but I think this section really comes down to Bite luck. So let's see how we actually do against the rival. We're going to lead off against his Haunter, which again is faster than us. We're 1 point in speed slower than this Pokemon in spite of having a badge boost, which means it's pretty much guaranteed to curse us, which I think is already game over on this fight. So I will use some Mud Slaps here to get through the Magnemite, and we are fortunately faster than Bayleaf. I think the issue is just that we're taking too much curse damage to ever get through that. So we're going to need to go to the Lighthouse just to gain an extra level so that hopefully we can outspeed that Haunter. So this is a Pokemon with which at least you couldn't take the most efficient route to try to get through Rival 3 and Morty. You're going to have to deviate a little bit to get extra battles. If you're staying on minimum battles, you're still technically minimum battles even if you come over here and fight against the trainers in the Lighthouse. But if you were doing any sort of like speed-based challenge, you obviously wouldn't want to do this. You would much rather just either grind against the rival or fight optional battles before this so you wouldn't have to take this inefficient routing. Now I can see some people making the argument that we shouldn't allow Pokemon to route this way, but remember, these battles are still required to beat the game. You're going to have to go up and meet Jasmine at some point, so it's just a matter of what order you take the battles in, and here I've just decided that it's perfectly fine to take these battles first and get the extra XP. And since we can technically get 2 rare candies in this section, we could even gain 2 levels that way if we really wanted to. So after gaining 1 extra level, we now should be faster than that Haunter, and it's a question of whether or not we can get the bite luck to line up. Level 25, of course, is a damage rounding threshold as well, so all of our moves should do just a little bit more damage against our opponents. And here we actually get Lick from the Haunter after Bite, which is kind of ideal. We're perfectly fine taking that small amount of damage there. However, after that, we get confused by Supersonic in spite of the fact that we Mud Slapped. So we're kind of in a bad spot here. We get poisoned. Now we can go into Bite on the Bayleaf. It goes Reflect, which is perfectly fine. Then we get a nice flinch, a critical hit, and we survive the Razor Leaf. So we are going to the final Zubat on low health, but I'm going to bite it, hoping for a flinch. We didn't get it, and we get knocked out. Still a flinch there, or if we weren't poisoned, we would have been able to win that time. This time we're to Bayleaf, but not confused, so theoretically we're going to do better, but he's doing a lot of damage to us and he doesn't get any flinches. This time we do get poisoned, but we got a critical hit bite on the Bayleaf and then a flinch, so we are able to knock that Pokemon out. We're back to the final Zubat again, and we survive on 1 HP from its bite, so we actually managed to win, but we can see this is incredibly close. Surf probably is the solution there. If we add Surf, I'm pretty sure we just one-shot the Magnemite, so we don't even have to deal with Sonic Boom or Supersonic there, and we probably also are going to be able to one-shot that final Zubat, keeping in mind that we would have a same type attack bonus with Surf, so it would be more than double the power of our bite, and I think that would be enough to get us through. But with that done, it's time to get into Morty's gym, where yet again we're gonna have to see how we do, given that we're not gonna be as fast as our evolved form was. And here the big thing is that we're not one-shotting the Haunters on the rando trainers teams, so we shouldn't be one-shotting against Morty either. So the Haunters are also going to take a couple hits to get through, giving him more opportunities to set up Curse or to just otherwise damage us in that fight. So I think the only strategy is to go in with a Mint Berry, given that I don't expect to outspeed the Gengar, so it's not like we can get flinches there without Quick Claw activations. I think it's just going to be more consistent this way, but let's test this and see if it actually works. So first up, we've got Morty's Ghastly, where Bite does get the 1-hit KO there, so we're perfectly fine. We are still faster than the first Haunter, so we can bite and one-shot that Pokemon. Out comes the Gengar now, though, and we are 8 points of speed lower. Remember, we are a max DV's Wartortle here, so you're never going to be a faster Wartortle unless you slammed a bunch of vitamins. And with that, we have to dodge the first Hypnosis. He lands the second Hypnosis, but we heal with the Mint Berry and knock him out. So now we just have to get through this Haunter. It's going to be a 2-hit KO, but he flinches. So we do manage to beat him on the first attempt with Wartortle. Bite is clearly carrying these water Pokemon in this first episode, though, as I've mentioned, Surf probably does about the same thing for us. It's also a special move, and with the same type attack bonus would actually be even stronger than a super effective Bite, roughly on par with a super effective Hidden Power Dark that has the maximum power. So basically we can say that water types are probably going to do reasonably well. The real issue is just going to be speed, whether or not they have the speed to be able to get through that Gengar without a lot of luck. And more specifically, Bite is helping us against Rival 3, where he loves to set up Curse on the first Pokemon. Yes, he can use Lick there. It's not like he's guaranteed to use Curse, but it's most of the time he seems to use Curse, and only some of the time he seems to go Lick strats or go Spite or Mean Look. So so I think he mostly tends towards Curse, but maybe that's just a bias. Maybe that's just something that I've seen in the run so far. We'll have to see how it plays out as the challenge continues. Anyway, that does it for Wartortle. It's time to check in on Croconaw. So Croconaw I expect to suffer from basically the same issues as Wartortle, but I think we also have lower special defense, which might make this section a little bit harder than it even was with that previous Pokemon. Still, we have Fury Cutter strats, so if we can just repeat what we did with our Feraligatr, we might have a better range against rival number 3, and then it really just comes down to how we do against Morty. And as we come to the final Jolteon here, we're yet again not going to be faster, so there are a couple strategies we could try. Of course, we could go for Bite or Water Gun, which are both equally powerful, but we could also go for something like Rage and try to build up. Let's just see what the range looks like here. So here we heal with a berry, and that is enough to allow Rage to let us knock our opponent out. So the Kimono Girl Mickey didn't pose as much of a difficulty for our Croconaw as it did for our Wartortle, just because we have moves that can double power every turn. But now we have to get into the rival battle, where yet again we're going to be 1 point of speed slower than that Haunter. So unless we get really lucky and it goes Lick against us, I just don't see any way that we're going to get through here. Well, let's test it one time just to see. So here against the Haunter, it goes Lick turn 1 and paralyzes us. So then we get cursed, and that's all she wrote. That is the other issue with being slower there. You can get licked and paralyzed, and Lick has a pretty high paralysis chance. I believe it's 20%. So it's decent enough that you're going to get paralyzed a reasonable percentage of the time, at least, when he licks you. And that will also result in you probably losing, because if we're paralyzed, we're probably not going to get the ranges we need on the Bayleaf. So I'm not going to mess around. I'm simply going to go down south. Let's just take care of business here by going and taking out all of these trainers that are required inside of the lighthouse. That way we can gain an extra level, outspeed against that Haunter. That's clearly the best strategy. So after gaining one more level, of course, we're once again going to be slightly faster than that Haunter, and we're going to see if we can just get the bite luck that we need. So of course, we're going to just lead off with a bite on the Haunter, hoping that we get just like that, Lick or a flinch or a critical hit, allowing us to get through that first Pokemon. He sends out Magnemite second, so I'm going to go for the Fury Cutter strat here. Sure, he can go Thunder Shock, etc., but we're just hoping not to hit ourselves in confusion or miss. As long as we can hit, we should be able to knock this Pokemon out, and at that point we would be able to knock out the Bayleaf. We hit ourselves in confusion, thus fainting that time, but I think we have it basically in the bag once we get through that Pokemon. The big issue, however, is that we are not as survivable against special moves, so the Magnemite is tending to use Thunder Shock on us, since it seems to be doing a lot more damage. So for example, after that critical hit, we're guaranteed to be knocked out, with the Magnemite surviving on 1 HP against our Fury Cutters. So we definitely need no critical hits and no paralysis if we're going to be able to get through there. So at this point, I'm thinking the best strategy might honestly just be to go all in on the bite strats. Let's just see how that works out. So here we just knocked out the Magnemite as quickly as we could with Water Gun. We happened to get a miss, which was very nice. Now we're just going to try to bite on the Bayleaf. It gets a critical hit Razor Leaf though, and knocks us out the next turn. So we can see that this is definitely nowhere near as consistent as what we were dealing with before, and it kind of raises the question, what strategy should we take? And at this point, I think the best strategy is actually to just give ourselves an item like a berry in order to try to heal in battle and see if the extra little HP does it for us. So now we'll try to set up Fury Cutter again, but this time relying on the fact that we can heal some damage. And of course, we have to miss a Fury Cutter there, resulting in us not being able to build up enough, and we're basically going to lose this attempt. So the other possibility, I guess, is to go for Rage, just to see if we can build up damage better with this move, since he is using a lot of Thunder Shocks against us and it doesn't really care as much about whether or not he confuses us. Still, we're simply not getting the ranges that we need with these moves. And outside of that, we really need a lot of flinches from the Bayleaf if we're gonna just rely on bite strats. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to try to learn Surf with this Pokemon first, since it will be a much stronger move for us. So we'll learn that over Water Gun, and that move should essentially guarantee a one-hit KO on that Magnemite, and it might even one-hit KO against the very first Haunter. So let's just test that out. Here with Surf, no, it is not a one-hit KO. We're still going to need 2 hits there. So we pretty much have to go for the flinch strat on that first Pokemon. But now with Haunter going down, let's see what Surf does against Magnemite. It is in fact a one-hit KO. So we're going to get to Bayleaf every time then. And now let's just see what we can do. We are faster than this Pokemon, so we could try to set up Fury Cutter. It goes Reflect, but then it goes for Poison Powder, and it's not going to knock us out. So we actually are able to now knock the Bayleaf out with Fury Cutter strats, and we can go Surf to completely destroy Zubat. And just like that, we do manage to get through after adding on Surf, but it seems like the real strategy is just to hold off on doing Fury Cutter until you get to the Bayleaf. And then if it doesn't go Razor Leaf every single turn, you actually can set up enough to knock it out. Still, it's definitely not as good as we were doing with like Wartortle, so Croconaw is looking kind of sus here, but I think Bite's going to get the job done now that we get into Morty's gym. And it's worth noting that Surf is technically stronger here in this gym, given that it is a same type move. So if we're close on a range like here against this Haunter, we definitely wouldn't be one-shotting the Haunter with Bite. It might be a range here with Surf, but either way, we know that we're going to get through that Pokemon because it just can't deal enough damage to us. But now let's not learn Scary Face. I still don't think we want to learn that move in the long term, but let's see if our current moveset is enough to be able to get through Morty. I am going to give the Mint Berry yet again, because I think that is our best shot of getting through this fight. So let's just test this out. I'm going to lead off with Surf against the first Ghastly. That will get the one-hit KO. Against Haunter, let's just see if Surf gets it or not. It does in fact get the one-hitter there as well. Now we're slower than the Gengar, but Surf is technically stronger, so I'm going to go for Surf here since we're already slower. This is going to be a 2-hit KO. We heal with the Mint Berry to avoid the sleep, and we've made it to the final Haunter where Surf is going to be a 2-hitter, but he just uses Spite, so we win. So Morty, yet again, he's definitely not shaping up to be quite as hard as Rival number 3. And this is a pattern that we've seen a lot in this challenge. Rival 2 was definitely tougher than Bugsy, and Whitney's section basically didn't eliminate anything because there was no rival battle there, and Whitney just had so many ways to cheese her fight. I think this section too, given the fact that Hidden Power Dark exists, means that any Pokemon that fails just on Morty probably can get through with the Hidden Power Dark, unless it has like a terrible special attack stat or somehow has a weakness that gets completely crushed by Morty himself. I just don't see a situation where we're going to struggle that hard here. That being said, the rival fight is proving to be pretty difficult, and honestly, if Surf strats hadn't gotten us through there, we would have had to resort to something that would have been broken OP, or at least incredibly luck-based like Ice Punch for freeze type of strategies there. Still, we did manage to get through, so that brings us to all of our challengers today getting through this section. Is this an omen for what is to come, or is it just luck on the first set of Pokemon? Keep in mind, these starting Pokemon typically, especially the fully evolved forms, have really good stats, and they have pretty good movesets overall. So maybe not too surprising, but I'm sure that some Pokemon are going to get exposed here. Anyway, with that being said, let's now move on to our final Pokemon of the day. We have a channel member pick in Squirtle. So that brings us to the final Pokemon of today's episode. We have Shell Shocker from channel member HeiknBacon. Of course, this Squirtle is running Zap Cannon, which at least in theory gives it another way to get through some tough fights because it could go for the paralysis strats, but we'll just have to see if that strategy is even necessary, or do bite strats work well enough? Let's get into this and find out. So here as we come to the final Kimono Girl Mickey, I'm actually going to use Zap Cannon here because we're going to get Thundershocked turn 1. Oh, we get paralyzed. That's not what we wanted to see. We're going to have to reset and try this again. But if we can manage to land the Zap Cannon, of course, we will paralyze the Jolteon. Then we outspeed and then we could go into bite strats. And that could be a way to get us through because we will have the ability to flinch here. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out there. We're going to need to land the first Zap Cannon to have a reasonable shot. But after we get that, now we can go into the bites and we're really just hoping to get a flinch or paralysis for a turn. I think we get through this. It might be worth it to simply throw on a berry though, just to have a little more survivability. Outside of that, it just comes to the 50% chance to miss with Zap Cannon that is causing me to reset an awful lot of times here because if we miss that first one, there's just really no point. We're already up to 15 resets with this strategy and now we get paralyzed, so we no longer have the ability to para-flinch. So yeah, this fight is turning out to be really hard. We might actually need to route a different way just to have a better chance, so I think it's time to head to the lighthouse again with one of these member picks. And while I know everybody has seen me go out of my way to really make member picks overpowered so that they have a chance to keep going, there is likely going to be a point in the game at some point where some of these member picks are simply going to be too weak and they're no longer going to be able to progress in the game. And when that happens, even if I give them all the best TMs, etc., I mean, that's going to be what it is. Like here with this Squirtle, sure, we could go Blizzard strats if we really wanted to. That could be like our last ditch Hail Mary, Blizzard and hope for the freeze strategy, but even that at some point is likely to break down. So the question is, what do we do at that point? If we reach the point where even those complete Hail Mary strategies no longer do anything for us, we're really going to have to consider when to start failing even member picks in this challenge. For now, there are enough technically legal strategies available that we can't fail any of these Pokemon so far, but it still remains to be seen. We may end up in that situation eventually. The other big factor here is that no matter what we do, we are going to be slower than rival number 3's Haunter because we're not even close to having the same speed. So we're going to be dealing with a speed disadvantage for this entire section. Still, let's go back in here and just see if we can manage to beat Mickey now. I don't think we even actually gained a level in that section, but still, maybe we just get a better lucky range or something. And here we are still getting knocked out. So the question is there a better strategy that we could be using here? So what I'm going to try to do is actually to forget the move Withdraw, because we could learn Defense Curl via a TM later on in the run. And of course, Defense Curl would stack with something like Rollout, which could be really useful as we keep going. But that just kind of leads me to the question, what move should I use instead? And Dig is a pretty reasonable strategy here. I'm going to try to learn Dig over Withdraw, and let's just see how that does against this fight on the Jolteon. So here we're going to get Thundershocked either way. We get paralyzed, which is really bad, but then Dig does really good damage. And now we simply bite it down. So yeah, Dig is the solution there, at least for that fight. That gets us to level 25, of course. Now we can get access to Surf, which I also think we're probably going to end up using over Water Gun. And yeah, there may be a point where the Zapcan and Squirtle, while it is, of course, a kind of memey Pokemon, might just not be worth it to keep. At some point, we might be better off replacing that move with something that's more reasonable. So for now, let's go ahead and fight against our rival. Let's just see what kind of range we get in this one. So here, of course, we're going to lead off with Bite. It's going to knock off Haunter after it uses Curse, of course, but that really didn't work very well for us. We Dig against the Magnemite, and that does allow us to one-shot that Pokemon. And now we are, in fact, faster than the Bayleaf. The problem is we just don't have anything particularly strong here. We did flinch it the first time, but we might even need to add a move like Ice Punch here to have a better chance of getting through this Pokemon. So that's what I'm actually going to do. I'm going to forget Water Gun here because obviously we have Surf in the bag, and instead let's learn a different move. We can go Ice Punch or we could go Rollout. The benefit of Rollout, of course, is that it would build up damage, so we might be able to just one-shot by the time we get to the Bayleaf. Bayleaf. But let's just test it out. Let's see what rollout does for our Pokemon, because we've seen rollout strats be pretty OP, and like I said, if it doesn't work out, we could always just replace this move with something else. But for now, Water Gun's gone, Rollout is in. So here, instead of going Bite, I'm gonna just set up Rollout here on the first Haunter, basically just hoping to double our power up. Magnemite comes out next, so we're going to knock this Pokemon out after that. Out comes the Bayleaf. We are faster, and we do in fact get the one-hit KO. So now we're on the final Zubat. I think if Zap Cannon hits, we will win. Sure enough, it does, and just like that, we are able to beat the rival. So rollout strats could be incredibly important for this Pokemon going forward. Like I said, we could end up with a defense curl rollout strat that turns out to be the best way to get through the entire game. But for now, let's go ahead and get to Morty's gym. Let's just try to bite down all the rando trainers and then see what strategy we can get to work on Morty himself. It again might be the rollout strat with Cement Berry. And now the big thing here is that the Haunters are faster than us, so we're much more likely to actually take damage in these fights or to get cursed in these fights. So we're going to be at a pretty big disadvantage compared to some of our previous runs. Now we do get to learn Protect here. I'm not sure if this move is worthwhile or not. So here's the thing. I think that I'm mostly going to go Rollout from here on out. Bite, while it does have flinching potential, isn't necessarily going to be that useful. The only Pokemon that I can think of where Bite is going to be really super important is when we get to Will and we're up against his Exeggutor. That's the spot where we might regret forgetting Bite. The question is, what do we actually want to use Protect against? Here, I'm just really not sure that Protect is a strategy that I want to use, because I'm trying to think if there's any opponent that is going to be like highly likely to use a move that either builds up and we want to use Protect in order to prevent the buildup, or an opponent that uses a move, some sort of status, but that's possible to anticipate, or an opponent that, for example, uses like self-destruct that we would want to maybe try to use Protect strats against. Basically Koga or the executive at the top of the radio tower, but really not that many opponents. I just can't think of a situation where I would want Protect over any of these moves that I currently have, so I'm simply not going to learn it for now. Tell me in the comments if that's a mistake. Tell me specific situations where you think it would be really useful that maybe I'm overlooking. Anyway, that brings us to Morty, and here I think I'm going to try to go for the rollout strat. Let's see how it actually goes though. So here I'm going to start by setting up rollout on the Ghastly. We get a nice 2-hit KO there. Haunter comes out next. It misses Hypnosis. We knock it out in a single hit. Gengar misses Hypnosis. We knock it out in a single hit. And we're to the final Haunter. It goes Nightshade. We go rollout and we win. So yeah, once again, rollout strats actually can work there. We probably should have had a Mint Berry on to be safer, but it worked out either way. So just like that, we have completed the first episode of the Morty Minimum Battles series with no Pokemon failing. Everything got through yet again. We'll have to see. Maybe Morty again doesn't turn out to be as hard as I imagined him to be. That being said, all of our water types today had access to a dark type move in Bite. We saw the continued dominance of moves that build up like Rollout and Fury Cutter, and of course we just had good enough stats and speed with a lot of these Pokemon to simply dominate the gym. That being said, I think we're going to have some interesting challengers next time. Based on today's results, I'm going to come back with a larger set next time. We're going to do 16 challengers, coming in with Butterfree, the entire Pidgey line, Raticate, Fearow, Arbok, which could be kind of interesting here. We're going to have Pikachu and Raichu, Sandslash, and then moving over to Johto, we will have Furret, Noctowl, Crobat. Lantern will come in, we'll see how that one goes. Togetic, and of course Xatu. And before I forget, while we're doing Crobat, let's just get a Golbat in there as well so that we can test out some different types of Pokemon in this section. I'm going to be very interested to see how the poison types do, especially Arbok, but I believe they all have Bite, so they should be reasonably good here. A pure ground type like Sandslash in theory would be really good as long as it can use its stabbed ground type moves, but we'll have to see how that works out. Normal types have been dominant up to this point, but this could be the first spot where some of these normal types start to run into a wall against the Ghost Gym. Lantern was by far and away one of the most questionable Pokemon from earlier sections, so this yet again could be a spot where that Pokemon struggles. We'll also work in some member picks next time. We will, of course, have that Chinchou, which again could be a really tough Pokemon in this section. And I'm also kind of interested to see how grass types are going to perform here, especially when they don't have access to Mud Slap, so we might have to come back with our Vileplume that knows Acid. Anyway, those are the Pokemon for next time. Place your predictions down below. Let me know which Pokemon you think are going to get through. Do you think any are going to struggle? And if so, why? I'd really love to hear it. But with that, let's finish this episode and just thank you guys for watching the first episode of the Morty Minimum Battle series. I will see you in the next one. Now, before I go, I promised at the beginning of this I would give just a very quick life update. You guys know I didn't get much done in January. I lost a family member that was really close to me. At the same time, I've been redoing my overlay in the background, so what you see now is still the old overlay, but there's going to be an updated version coming soon when I can get it done. But basically, it's just been a little bit chaotic for the past month or so. I'm finally kind of getting back to normal, but I'm just about to leave for a trip back to the United States in order to handle my family's business. So with that, just understand there's going to be a little bit of a delay on the next episode, but hopefully after that, we will be back on track, back to doing what we were doing closer to the end of the year last year. So, you know, just bear with me, guys. I do have to say, though, that it's really gotten me motivated even more to work on YouTube projects, because if I can ever reach the point where I could support myself and my family off of YouTube, it would be much easier to travel back and forth between the US and where I live now in Japan. Plus, it would give a lot more flexibility so that I could maybe hire some editors to help me get content out. So I'm going to just keep plugging away and trying to improve. 2025, there's going to be a little more focus on some other projects outside of just the main Minimum Battle series, but never worry, I'm committed to getting this series done, and we are going to run every Pokemon through to the end of the game, all the way to Red. So just stick with me and bear with me a little bit while I get it sorted out. With that, I just want to say thank you guys again. I will see you in the next one. Later.